There are a lot of people in this world who do not finish what they've started. Some of you are smiling. Some of them are half smiles, which means you didn't even finish that. You just smirked a little bit, like, am I caught? Yeah, it's just a little bit of a smile. But there's a lot of people who don't finish what they start. You might be one of them, and some of you, based on your half smile, I can see that maybe you are one of them. You have those half-finished projects laying around the house, or those half-finished things going on. Most people have that going on. You even know what your project is. You just thought of it just now, like, oh man, that's what my wife or my husband's been reminding me of, or I've been reminding myself of, but today just wasn't the day. So you just put those things off till a later day. We all have those things somewhere, so don't be hard on yourself. You're not the only one. We all have something like that. But I don't think any of us set out to become an underachiever. I don't think that's our goal. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to do this halfway, and I'm going to check it off. That's not what we do. We don't like, I'm going to wash the clothes today. I'm not going to dry them. But I'm going to cross laundry off the list. We don't do that. We don't set out to be an underachiever. If you were to tell me that your goal in life was to be an underachiever, I would immediately tell you that you set yourself up for failure already. If you achieve, think about this, is all going to get deep here. If you achieve your goal of being an underachiever, everybody catching this so far? If you achieve your goal of being an underachiever, then you have just become a success and an achiever, because you achieved the goal of being an underachiever. Everybody catching this? This means you failed at being an underachiever. If that didn't make sense, watch it on video later. I'm not going to go through that again. That hurt my brain just to say all that. You have now become a successful failure, is all you did. I'm going to be an underachiever. Did you make it? Yes. Oh, that's too bad. You set yourself up for failure. No matter how you go on this, you set yourself up for failure. In this scenario, all you're doing is laying out the groundwork for you to fail. There's no way around it. You fail. You make it or you don't make it, you still fail. Nobody likes to be set up for failure. Nobody does. You don't want to be set up for failure. I don't want to be set up for failure. I want to take you to a passage of Scripture where it shows where God set Moses up. He sets Moses up, but it isn't as bad as it looks at first glance, and we'll go through that. But I want you to see the day that God set Moses up. Before we look at this passage, I want you to see the history that led up to it. Moses is with the nation of Israel in the wilderness, where things are becoming extremely stressful for Moses. I'm glad I'm this pastor and not that pastor. Moses led a lot of people. Better him than me. He had a rough crowd, 2 million plus people. He dealt with that crowd, and it was a bumpy ride for Moses. But he's in the wilderness with these people, and things are becoming extremely stressful. Look at Exodus chapter 17 and verse 2. It says, therefore the people contended with Moses and said, give us water that we may drink. So Moses said to them, why do you contend with me? Why do you tempt the Lord? The situation in the wilderness got pretty intense when the children of Israel became thirsty and they couldn't find a source of water anywhere. These people are thirsty. They want water. They're becoming stressful. They're becoming disgruntled. We're mad because we don't have water. So they went straight to the leadership and started making it his problem. That's a lot of times that's how that works. We're upset, go to the leadership and make it their problem. Let's do that. So that was their move. Let's make it the leadership's problem. Look at how the people approach Moses here. They left all their tact behind, and they go straight for the kill. They're like, let's not even worry about how we're going to present it. Let's just say it. Look at verse 3 of chapter 17. And the people thirsted there for water. And the people complained against Moses and said, why is it that you have brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? Look at that accusation. Why have you brought us here to kill us and our children with thirst? Now, Moses knew that was the plan all along. But how'd they figure it out? Of course that wasn't his plan all along. I'm going to rescue him from Egypt and kill him with thirst. That's what I want to do. That's not what Moses set out to do. But look at their accusation. Why is it that you brought us here to kill us by thirst? Like, man, how'd you figure it out? How did you know that's what I was doing? That's not what I was doing. Moses' goal wasn't to set them up for death. That wasn't his goal. This is what happens when people operate under assumption rather than talking it over. This is the kind of thing that happens. The rumor is that leadership has done something wrong. Moses is doing something wrong. So let's assume this. Let's go ahead and let's spread this rumor based on assumption. Nobody's talking to Moses about this. They just come to this conclusion themselves. Moses is our problem. So the rumor has started. Now, because nobody has taken the time to talk with Moses about this situation, the majority has accepted the rumor, and now they're standing against Moses. And it's not like they're just a little bit upset with Moses. They're really upset with Moses. They're going to take their anger to the next level. They're so mad with Moses because they don't have water to drink. Look at verse 4. So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me. They're going to kill me, God." Why? Because they're thirsty. Seems reasonable. Yeah. I mean, I can see it. You didn't see this coming? They're thirsty, you die? You didn't see that coming? They want to kill me, God. They want me dead. What am I supposed to do? They want Moses off the scene. They're thirsty, and killing Moses seems to be the only reasonable solution. If we kill him, it'll all be better. Yeah, that's the reasonable move right there. It's amazing what irrational emotions can bring people to do. Let's kill him. Will that fix it? No. But let's go that route. That's our solution. Let's kill him. In spite of the people's bad attitudes, God does love them, and he provides water for them. God's still good, and he still takes care of his people. He tells Moses that he's about to perform a miracle for the people, and he's going to use Moses to perform this miracle. This will show the people that God is still on Moses' side. You might be mad at Moses and think it's his fault, but I'm going to show that I'm in his corner here. I'm going to use him to perform a miracle. I want you to see that I'm still standing with him even though you're not. Look at verse 5. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go on before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. Also take in your hand your rod with which you struck the river, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. God told Moses to take the rod, and I want you to strike the rock. Go ahead and hit the rock. Water came out of the rock, and the people backed off. Like, okay, no problem anymore. Thanks for the water. Now the people go ahead and leave. They're not mad at Moses anymore. They see that God's supporting Moses. Everything's all better. They go ahead and back off. This story actually sets the stage for the passage I want to preach on today. Exodus 17 wasn't where I wanted to go. I want to talk about Numbers chapter 20. But this is the background to the story I want to preach on. Years later, we see the nation of Israel going through the same thing all over again. They have bad attitudes. They're all thirsty. There's no water to be found, and Moses is the target. It's like they don't learn a thing. We look at Israel all the time and we're like, man, these people. Have you ever looked at yourself like, I don't want to talk about that. We're putting Israel down right now. Well, let's not talk about us. We do the same thing. We do the same kind of thing Israel did. But we do look at them and go, I can't believe they did that. Yeah, but look at our lives. We might be doing the same thing in a different area. They even accuse Moses of bringing them out for the purpose of killing them again. In Numbers 20, did you bring us out here to kill us? Yep, got me again. It's got to be it. Yeah, I brought you out here to kill you. Of course I didn't bring you out here to kill you. Do you not remember Exodus 17? It all happened there, and here we are again. They're mad at Moses again. The story seems very similar, very similar. But this time, things take an unexpected turn in Numbers chapter 20. When Moses and his brother Aaron come to God, God gives Moses some very familiar instructions, but with a slight change. We're going to change it up a little bit, Moses. Here's what I want you to do. Numbers chapter 20 and verse 8. Take the rod. You and your brother Aaron gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their animals. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. This time God tells Moses to speak to the rock rather than strike the rock. Grab the rod. Got it. What do you want me to do? Go talk to the rock. Okay. I'm going to talk to a rock. Okay. I'm going to speak to the rock this time. That's all I want you to do is I want you to go speak to the rock. The rock is a picture of Christ. It is one of those Old Testament shadows pointing to Christ. That is the illustration that God is setting up here for the children of Israel. It points to Jesus. He was beaten and crucified once for all sins. He was struck one time. Another sacrifice was never going to be needed because the crucifixion was enough. Jesus' sacrifice was enough. He was struck one time. His sacrifice was sufficient. He never needs to pay another price. It took care of everything. Now we just receive the living water by simply asking. It's a gift. This is a picture that God is setting up in the Old Testament, one of those shadows that are pointing to the cross and what Jesus is going to take care of. This is one of those pictures God says, I want you to see this. I'm going to illustrate this for you. He will be struck one time. After that, no more sacrifice needed. Just ask. Just ask. And you will have the living water, which is Jesus Christ. This was a picture God was using to point to Christ. So God tells Moses to take his rod and go speak to the rock. When Moses gets there, he sees the people and he loses it. It's always good to see the leader in the situation calm, cool, and collected. That's what we want to see. That's not what they get to see here. Moses shows up at the rock and he sees the people and he just loses it. Look at verse 10 of Numbers 20. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, Hear now, you rebels. Must we bring water for you out of this rock? Moses found his breaking point. He's tired of all the whining. He's tired of all the complaining. He's tired of all the accusations about him bringing them out to kill them by thirst. He's tired of all of it. Moses left Egypt and all the perks that Egypt had, and he gave it all up to lead these people into freedom. I gave up everything to lead you. Now he gets to watch as they refuse to grow in their relationship with God and accuse him of being a dictator. I gave up everything for you people, and all you do is whine and complain. And you blame me because you're thirsty, and you revolt against me, and I'm tired of it. Moses is officially fed up. He's mad. And that's when the story takes a surprising turn. Look at verse 11. Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animals drank. Something unique is happening here. Moses strikes the rock instead of speaking to the rock. He's angry, and honestly, I think we can all sympathize. Like, we get it, Moses. We understand. You were mad and you're justified. It's okay. I think we can all look at it and go, yeah, I can see why he did it. I can see why he did it. But everything still seems to be working out. You see the story? Everything still seems to be moving forward, and everything's fine. God provides water for the people in spite of the fact that Moses didn't follow the directions. The people still get water. The people are still able to have their thirst quenched. Water did come out of the rock. Moses struck the rock. He didn't speak to it, but there's still water. The people's problem is gone. They finally get something to drink. On top of that, nobody knows what God told Moses to do in the first place. That was a conversation between Moses and God. They don't know that God told Moses to speak to the rock instead of strike it. Everything seems to have worked out just fine. Put yourself in the position of Israel, the children of Israel. They look at the situation. Moses hits the rock just like he did the first time. He chews them out a little bit first, and then he hits the rock, and then water comes out of the rock, and they're like, hey, it worked again. Moses took care of it again. Everything is moving along just fine. But God doesn't see it that way. Look at what happens in the next verse. Verse 12. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. Moses has just spent the last 40 years leading a bunch of spiritually immature Israelites through the wilderness. He has endured all of their whining. He has endured all of their threats to have him killed. He even asked God to spare their lives after they built a golden calf and started worshiping that as their God. And they get to go in? I hit the rock. That's all I did. And what's the punishment? You don't get to go in. Okay, I guess that's fine. Do you see the problem here? Everybody's picking up on that? Like, yeah, we don't like it. We don't like this at all. We were on Moses' side. We don't like this scenario. God says, yeah, you're not going in. Moses walked away from all the pleasures of Egypt in order to bring the people into freedom and into the promised land. Now, because he hit a rock with his rod, he's not allowed to go into the promised land himself. This seems extremely unfair. But it gets worse. The scenario actually gets worse. Let's look back a few verses and look at what God told him to do. Verse 8, take the rod. You and your brother Aaron gather the congregation together. Speak to the rock before their eyes. God told Moses to take the rod, but he never told him to do anything with it. Moses was just supposed to speak to the rock. He didn't need the rod to do that. Hey, grab your rod, okay? Now go talk to the rock. God told him to take the very thing that he would use to disobey God. Did he need the rod to get the water out? No. Just speak to the rock. And God first says, hey, pick up the stick. Now go speak to the rock. It kind of looks like God set Moses up here. And most of us are thinking, I hate to see God as the bad guy, but things aren't looking good for the home team here. It's not looking good. Yeah, it kind of looks like God set Moses up. He wouldn't have even had the rod if God wouldn't have told him to take it. But he had the rod because God told him to take it. He did obey that far. And then he struck the rock instead of speaking to the rock. As I said before, the people wouldn't have even known that he disobeyed. They didn't hear God tell him to speak to the rock. They weren't there for that conversation. And God still blessed the people with water. They still got the water. What would be the harm in letting Moses' outburst of anger just go ahead and slide? Let's go ahead and let this one slide. What would be the problem with this? The people would have just assumed everything was okay. Well, that's the problem. That's the problem right there. Everybody would have just assumed everything was okay. You see, God didn't tell Moses to take the rod because he needed Moses to do something with the rod. I don't want you to take it because you're going to use it for anything, but I need you to take it. The rod was always used to show that Moses and God were together. Moses used it at the Red Sea crossing. Moses used it when he threw it down on the ground and it turned into a snake, and it ate the snakes that the Pharaoh's rods, they did the same thing and it ate those snakes. Every time that rod was used, it represented that God was with Moses. Every single time. Moses, without that rod, there was nothing. That rod represented the fact that God was with Moses every single time. That is why God says, take the rod. They're going to see us together in this. They're not just going to see you doing something, Moses. They're going to see me doing something with you. So take the rod. Take the rod. The rod represented God. We have to understand that the rod always represented God. When Moses displayed his sinful anger and God's power together, water still came out of the rock because God was faithful to provide for his people. He told them he would take care of them, and he's faithful. He still provided for his people. But if there were no consequences for Moses' sinful display of anger, the people would just assume it was justified. They would conclude that they were free to sin as God's people. We can just go ahead and do that anytime. They would begin to believe that behavior doesn't matter because God would still be faithful to keep his promise either way. It's okay. Act however you want to act because God's still going to be faithful. So God's power and our sin, living all cozy together, will be just fine. That's the message, that's the mindset that God did not want the children of Israel taking. Well, that same mindset still exists today. It's called taking advantage of grace. That's what this is. Here's a promise that we hold dear, and we are very thankful for this promise today. We love this promise. Look at 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 13. If we are faithless, he remains faithful. He cannot deny himself. It is so good to know that we are not going to lose our salvation because we did something wrong. Because your salvation is not based on your works. It's based on his work. It's not based on your word. It's based on his word. It was his sacrifice that accomplished it all. It's not your sacrifices that accomplish it all. It's so good to know that we're not going to lose our salvation because we did something wrong. Once a person is saved, they remain saved because God remains faithful to his word. He remains faithful. But a lot of people use this as a license to sin. Can I sin? Yes, you can. That doesn't mean you have permission to. It means you have the ability to. Yes, you can sin. You can absolutely do it. Will I lose my salvation? God's still providing for you. His word is still the same. No, you will not lose your salvation. So people use this grace as a license to sin. When people experience the goodness of God, they often become lazy in the comfort of that goodness. I love how much God is good. I love how much grace he gives to me. And we become lazy and complacent, living in that grace and just knowing no matter what I do, he's still going to be faithful. Yes, he is. And we become lazy. We understand that God is going to remain faithful because that is who he is. And we end up taking advantage of that goodness. What we forget is the fact that Jesus was never brought into our lives. We were brought into his life. Lock it in. Please lock it in. He was never brought into your life. You were brought into his life. You didn't invite him in. He invited you in. That's how that works. It didn't go the other way. Salvation is not just a Jesus additive. That is not what salvation is. If I go ahead and take this broken, messed up, sinful life and I just add Jesus, ta-da, everything's fine now. I've got salvation because I added Jesus to my life. We didn't add him to our sinful lives and suddenly everything was all better. Jesus took away our sins and gave us a new nature. We had a sinful nature. Now we have sinful habits. We're still operating like we used to, but we used to have a sinful nature. But look at what God did. 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 4. By which have been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in this world through lust. Jesus didn't change your sinful nature. He exchanged your sinful nature for divine nature. He didn't change it. He didn't clean it up. No, he replaced it. He made all things new, not all things clean. He made all things new. Why do our behaviors often resemble what we were saved from? He took your sin away. Why do you still act like something you're not? He made you a child of God. He made you a saint, not a sinner. He made you a saint. Why do you sin? That's not who you are. That's not what you're made for. He made you new. He made you new. Why do you act like something you're not? Old programming. I still behave the way I used to. I still fall back on those habits. Like, stop that. That is not what you're made for. That's not who you are. Enjoy the relationship. Don't solve your problems with sinful actions. That's not who you are. Jesus took away our sin, and he gave you a new nature. He gave you a new heart and a new spirit. He gave us liberty. We were once held under the bondage of sin. That is absolutely who we were before salvation. We were held under the bondage of sin, but we were free. We were freed because of that incredible goodness of God. He freed us from that. But people have taken that goodness and they have become lazy in their behavior. Am I going to lose it? No, you're not. Nope, God's goodness is still intact. His salvation is still intact. So I can act however I want to, and it won't risk my salvation. It will not risk your salvation. Then what's stopping me? What's stopping me? This is why some people preach that grace is a dangerous thing. It's dangerous because people will still continue to sin. They'll keep doing it because they know they have nothing to lose. So don't preach grace. It's all about grace. The whole Bible is all about grace. How do you get out of preaching about grace? It's all about grace. So you can't get around that. Well, people will take advantage of it. That is true. People will take advantage of grace. They will become lazy in their behavior because they know God will not become lazy in his character. And we abuse it. Grace is incredible, but we cannot forget that behavior is important. We have to understand that. You and I were called to be ambassadors for Christ. Paul tells us that we are ambassadors for Jesus Christ. We represent him in this world. What we have now is a form of diplomatic immunity. That is what we have. According to Oxford Dictionary, let me just read this. If you've never heard of diplomatic immunity, let me give you the definition. Diplomatic immunity is the privilege of exemption from certain laws and taxes granted to diplomats by the country in which they are working. Well, child of God, you are a citizen of heaven because of what Jesus did for you through his death, burial, and resurrection. Your citizenship has changed. You are not of this world. You have a new citizenship. You belong to a new kingdom. You are citizens of heaven. That is who you are. Your citizenship has changed. You are now ambassadors in this world. You are representatives of him. You are in this world, not of this world. And you are to represent Jesus Christ in this world. If you sin, you will not have to pay the penalty of those sins. You have immunity. Jesus paid the penalty for all of those sins, so if you sin now, you don't have to pay the penalty of those sins. You may have to pay the consequences of those sins. That is true. You may have to pay the consequences. I robbed a store, I can't believe I'm in prison. Look what God punished me. No, that's what happens when you do that. Those are called consequences. God is not punishing you. That's just what happens. Those are the consequences of sinful behavior. It's not God punishing you. There's no punishment for sin to be given anymore. Jesus took all the punishment for sin. God is he's not looking out to punish you. He wants to bring you close. That's what he wants to do. Enjoy the relationship. Jesus took all the punishment. There's no more punishment left for you. So why are you still doing these sins? Well, I have diplomatic immunity. Isn't that what I have? I'm a citizen of heaven and I don't have to pay the price for breaking the crimes here because Jesus already paid the price for me. But I want you to understand the repercussions of your actions if you do choose to sin. If we heard that a U.S. ambassador was committing crimes in another country because they knew they had diplomatic immunity, think about this for a second. A U.S. ambassador in another country committing crimes in that country because, well, they have diplomatic immunity. We would insist that they were fired immediately, wouldn't we? As the people of the United States, we'd say, get them out. Get them out. Why? They have diplomatic immunity. Who cares? The problem is, as citizens of the United States of America, we would want them expelled from that country. We want them taken out of that country immediately because of the bad name they're making for our country. Get them out. They're representing us wrong. Get them out of there. Also, the citizens from that country would want nothing to do with our country at all because of the reputation our country would now have because of that representative. We do understand that this is how that would work, right? We understand that if that was somebody that worked for the United States, we would insist as the people of the United States that that person was expelled. Get them out of there. If we can see the seriousness within the topic of government, then why don't we see it in this topic of God's family? Why don't we see it that way? Yes, as a child of God, you have liberty. But look at what Paul asks us not to do. Galatians chapter 5 and verse 13. For you, brethren, have been called to liberty. Only do not use liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. Grace is God's goodness to its fullest extent. He gave us so much grace and so much goodness. Why do so many people take the liberty that comes with grace and use it as a liberty to sin? Why do we do that? This was the very message God did not want the nation of Israel taken home with them from Moses' sinful anger and God's provision. God's grace and our sinful behavior have no place together. No place together. One of them needs to leave, and I'm fairly certain that nobody wants grace to step down. They both can't be together. They can't be together. It's a good thing grace isn't going to step down, because God's character will not change. But God's grace and our sinful behavior have no place together. One of them has to step down, and grace isn't the one that you're going to pick. We have to, behavior is important. We have to understand that one of them's got to go. Grace or our behavior. And grace isn't going anywhere because God is faithful. God's going to remain faithful. When we first looked at the story about Moses and the rock, it seemed like God set Moses up. Like, man, you told him to take, that was a dirty trick, God. That was dirty. You told him to take the rod. You knew he was going to hit that rock. Yeah, I did. Like, you set Moses up. It seemed unfair. It seemed like God set Moses up. The truth is, he did. God did set Moses up. God set Moses up just the same way he set you up. The same way he set me up. God didn't set you up for failure. He set you up for success. God did set Moses up, but it wasn't in the negative. I set you up for success, Moses. Why did you choose this? Why did you go that way? I set you up for success. Look at 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 3. As his divine power has given to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us by glory and virtue. God set you up. Why would we allow ourselves to become lazy in the comfort of God's goodness rather than expressing a life of gratitude because of God's goodness? Why would we ever do that? Why would we choose to go with that old pattern of behaving because we're not going to lose our salvation? How ungrateful can we be? Why would we choose to sin in the middle of all that grace and all that goodness because we understand we have diplomatic immunity? You would sign petitions to have that ambassador expelled from that country if you heard about somebody, a U.S. representative, being like that. We would all sign that petition, get him out. Well, can we take it that seriously when it comes to our living, our lifestyle? What comes through your television for your family? What you listen to over the radio? What you say, what you do in your life? Do we ever consider that as maybe a bad representation of our citizenship? Do we ever look at it that way? Because it would be healthy to do so. Is God going to punish you if you don't? No. You'll have to face the consequences. But the punishment was all given to Jesus Christ. Shouldn't we live with gratitude because of that? We represent the most incredible person of all time. Child of God, you represent the most amazing person that has ever existed. You are his representative. Maybe we should be living a life that says, thank you for the cross. Thank you for being my friend. That's the life people are going to see flowing from me. A life that says, thank you for the cross. And thank you for choosing to be my friend. I did not deserve it. I didn't need you. I needed your grace. I just didn't deserve your grace. But you gave it to me anyway. Why would I sin against you? What's going to stop people from sinning? Their love and gratitude for Jesus Christ. I can't do that because of everything you did for me. I cannot turn my back on you. I cannot sin against you. Why? What's going to happen if you do? Nothing. And that's why I can't. Because of your goodness, because of your grace, because of your love. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the cross. Why aren't we living our life like that instead? He is so deserving of our obedience and our service. He is so worthy. He set us up with every spiritual blessing, all things that pertain to life and godliness and eternal life. He sets you up for success. Understand, God sets you up, but he sets you up for success. Do we consider it a light thing to be called the children of God? Do we really consider that to be a light thing? I'm a child of God. Does that mean nothing to you? Do you understand what it took to get you into that status? It took everything to get you there. And now you're doing what? How are you representing him? Do we understand what it took to make us a child of God? Do you consider it a light thing to be called a child of God? Please don't, because that's huge. Behavior matters. You and I are called to be lights in a dark world. And yes, you have diplomatic immunity, but you can bring shame to the family of God. And I'm asking you, as a representative of the family of God, don't do that. Don't do that. Because people don't necessarily want to listen to me either when they see other Christians representing God that way. And I can do the same, I can hurt you the same way. We've got to understand who we are and what our job is to do. Please do not use your liberty as an opportunity for the flesh. God sets you up. God sets you up. Live a life of gratitude for all that he's done. We get one chance to live this life for Jesus Christ. You get one shot at this. When this life is over, your time here is done. You don't go, okay, well, that was a trial run, right? No, that wasn't a trial run. That was in real time. That was your chance to live your life for Christ. We get one shot at this. Give it all you got. Give it all you got. Maybe we should be living a life that doesn't say, look, I have diplomatic immunity. Maybe we should be living a life that says, thank you for the cross. Everything about me just says, thank you for the cross. The life I live now because of him. It's not for myself. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for being my friend. And thank you so much for setting me up.